Tonight we have 4 of our alums here who were all homeschooled as children or now adults, sharing their experiences and answering questions. I do want to be really clear as we begin this that there are a lot of different kinds of homeschooling. I think all 4 of our panelists were unschooled. And unschooling is a type of homeschooling that pretty much follows what we do at nursery school. That is, rather than having a set structured curriculum, we follow children's interests. We might provide something that and see if it stimulates them, if they're interested in it. But the learning is really led by the learners. There are lots of other variations of homeschooling as well. Many people do school at home. That is, essentially, they just use a curriculum similar to the ones that traditional teachers use, and they follow that curriculum each day. There are hybrid homeschooling options like Da Vinci locally, where kids go to school a couple of days a week, following again a traditional curriculum, and then parents are expected to maintain that curriculum on the days that they're not in school. So I just wanted to give you that sense that the 4 people we'll be hearing from tonight, I think you guys, you folks can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were all pretty much unschooled. So with that, I'm gonna ask them to introduce themselves. And I think, Kate, you're in the top corner of my screen. Would you be willing to start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Tatsumi. Anybody who's watching this doesn't know me. So yeah, I'd love to talk about my experience with homeschooling. It was amazing. I started at Manhattan Beach Nursery School when I was little, and I didn't go to a structured school until I started community college. What ages? So yeah, I mean, I was homeschooled from like 6.5 till when I was about 18. Going to SMC was a pretty smooth transition for me from homeschooling. I felt like I was like excited to try something new. Often I've been asked like, oh, like, you never went to school? Like, wasn't it weird, like sitting in a desk, or did you feel like you didn't know as much as your peers? And I never really felt that way, like maybe with math, but I don't think that was because I was homeschooled. I just don't like math. But now I'm teaching at Manhattan Beach Nursery School. I'm also an artist. I have my BFA. So yeah, I've just been really enjoying spending time with kids and experimenting with ways of teaching and kind of gleaning from my own experience with learning and how everybody learns differently, and also doing my art at the same time. So it's been really great.
Thank you, Kate.
Sure.
Okay, I'm just going across my screen. So Andy, you're the next up on my screen.
So I'm Andy. I also went to school, I guess, until I was 5-ish. I know I did like 2 years in one of the, I think, the youngest group. And then I went to Play Mountain Place, an alternative private school in Culver City for 2 years, I think. And then pretty much I was unschooled until high school. I decided that I wanted to go to public school at that point. Definitely all of these choices were mine. My parents, I remember, like even after nursery school, I remember touring a public, like kindergarten, I guess it would be. And we like met a teacher, it was nighttime, I got to go classroom. And I remember getting a choice, like what did I want to do? And I remember I chose I wanted to go to Green Mountain, and then I chose I wanted to be homeschooled. I mean, I think they probably gave me like choices that they were okay with. It wasn't like, Andy, what do you want to do? But I picked that route. And then after 4 years in high school, I went to UC Santa Barbara and got my bachelor's there in linguistics. And then I went on to get my master's at San Diego State University. And now I work as a speech language pathologist. I specialize in voice and swallowing disorders. And I get to help people that have trouble with their voice or with swallowing trouble, mostly adults. I see some children, but not too many. Yeah, and I think that kind of just thinking about my educational path as a whole, I think having had the opportunity to choose what I wanted to do was really important for me, because I remember there were hard times throughout whatever, it was homeschooling or public schooling or whatever, but I kind of always fell back on like the fact that I got a role in deciding what I did, and so it felt more like I owned it, and I felt more committed to it because of that.
Thank you, Andy. Amy?
My name is Amy, and I was also unschooled mostly out of when I graduated from nursery school all the way up until I went to SMC, probably around the age of 19. I went to SMC for a couple of years and then transferred up to the Evergreen State College and spent 2 years up there. And since then, I have been teaching preschool, I've been nannying, I've been teaching nature education classes, and spending lots of time with kids. And similar to Andy, that it was, I remember going to the kindergarten open house and having some choice in it along the way. My choice was to stay at home with my mom for the most part. But in talking with my siblings, we shared kind of different perspectives based on that I got to make the choices throughout my education, and it was a little bit different for them. And I think that played an important part.
Thank you, Amy. Jeff?
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute myself. My name is Jesse Dotson. My mother just introduced me, and if you're watching this, probably been through Manhattan Beach Nursery School, so you've probably heard stories about me as a kid, or, you know, I've been used for many a parenting example, I think. And whenever I'm talking at these meetings, I'm never quite clear who's heard what. I unschooled pretty much from the time I left nursery school until I started college. I started community college at 18. There were a few periods where if you had asked me, I would have told you I went to school, but I wasn't really going to school. I was like sort of loosely affiliated and able to pop in when I wanted to at a couple of different alternative schools that were very into sort of alternative education models. Play Mountain Place and Pacifica Community Charter School specifically. Yeah, I think when I think about unschooling, I think in general, I really like having conversations with parents about it so that we can go back and forth. I think that's one of the things that I inherited in part from that experience, was a lot of just talking back and forth to people. And so I don't know if I have like a speech ready. I'm happy to answer questions. I feel like it was also very different periods throughout that time, where for a couple years I would sort of have one group of friends and be really into doing one thing, and then as I got older it changed. And skateboarding played a really big role in my life sort of once I hit puberty. That kind of became my life for the most part. And I learned a lot of things through skateboarding. I could go on about that at length, but yeah, I don't know. I think that's it for now.
Jesse, can you tell us what you're doing now?
Oh, yeah. Right now I'm finishing my master's thesis in environmental studies. So I've been living up in Washington State with my partner Gloria for the last 7 years, I think. I went to community college. I left for a couple years, and then I went back and I came up to Evergreen. I got my BA in sustainability studies, and then, yeah, chose to pursue a master's. And yeah, and sort of would have graduated if it was not for this COVID situation, sort of delaying my research a little bit, but hopefully in the next month.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, for sure.
I think since there's so few of us, I'm gonna just start with my list of questions, and any one of you who'd like to respond. One question I got from one of our parents had to do with topics or concepts that your parents introduced to you. And I think the sense I got of this question was they were thinking specifically about kind of what we think of more traditionally as academics, reading and writing and so on. And further along that line, if you were not performing at grade level in those subjects, specifically reading and writing, did that affect your self-esteem?
Hmm.
Can you repeat the first part of that, Laura? I got the
Sure,
academics affecting your self-esteem.
Yeah, and I think the question really was about, and anybody who wants to enlarge on this question, please feel free to. It was really about, did your parents introduce reading and writing to you?
So can I elaborate? Because I think
Yes,
that was my
good idea.
question.
It is your question. I was trying to be anonymous.
Thank you. So, so specifically what's going on for us is Avi is 9, and his forming of letters, he doesn't ever want to do it and hasn't ever wanted to do it, and I haven't pushed it. When he does do it, his forming of letters, I would say, is not so much more advanced than Aurelia's, who has been interested in doing it from a younger age. And I think, so I'm kind of wondering, I'm not necessarily wondering about writing specifically, but just, I haven't wanted to force academics on him because I've been concerned about, well, I don't want to preclude him enjoying something because I push it too soon, and I want to follow his lead. And I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, I don't care if you don't like writing, you're going to learn how to do it. That's where my brain is going. And so I'm just wondering if there were topics, not necessarily writing, but topics like that your parents introduced to you, and how that went down and how they introduced them and how they kept it from being a power struggle, if that came up. And then the portion, I'm not so concerned about comparing to grade level because Avi has no idea what the standards are. I barely know what the standards are. It's more that he's around other 9-year-olds, some homeschoolers, some in traditional schools. He's starting to know who is homeschooling, who is in traditional schools. He's aware of that. But seeing there are vastly different levels, and he's really great at his math skills are above and beyond, but his writing skills, his reading skills are kind of not where some of his, it's not even where some of his homeschool friends are. So I'm just kind of wondering how that might have gone for you as well, if you were aware of the differences between you and your friends that were in traditional school and where they were at versus where you were at, if it came into play for you at all. I'm afraid to ask him because I don't know that I don't know how much he notices, and I don't want to point anything out or make it an issue. But anyway, does that kind of give you guys an idea of what I'm asking?
Yeah, I have a little bit of the answer. I think just naturally when I became closer to like a preteen, like I was more aware that some people could write really nicely. I think around the time I was 10, maybe I did a writing class and wrote my, family friend that we didn't socialize with very often, lived maybe in another state or something, wrote her a letter. And it looked maybe like kindergarten, first grade level writing. And she wrote back with this perfect, a fifth grade font, perfect on the lines, beautiful. And that was, I think that was kind of when I realized and when it was important to me. And I think as long as you're seeing him excelling and working on different areas, that you don't have to be too worried. And then, I don't know, I've been thinking about this a little bit, like maybe as they're getting to that age, at the beginning of the school year, like looking at these are some of the things that, I don't mind that you're doing them, but I don't know, at some point, letting them know, I guess, what their peers are doing and seeing if they're interested in doing that. And if they're not, that's fine. But I think then you're starting to have those conversations. And then when all of a sudden they're like, Mom, you didn't teach me to write, and I can't, why can they do that? And I can't, and, you want to work on it. And that, I think that naturally he'll start to be aware of it. And then...
Yeah. I think I could jump in there too, because I think I was definitely also the 9-year-old who could not. I was probably like 12 or 13 before I got my writing looked like it was above like a 7-year-old. And I think for me, I don't know, like when I hear that, I can definitely relate to that. And I think for me, that what Amy said, that was a big part of like what made me want to write was sort of that moment of realization that I wasn't on level with my peers in some sense. And it was like I came home and I think I remember like, Mom, I really want that paper that has like one of the books that has the letters and it has the lines and it has the dotted lines. And it was like, I could not have cared less. And then all of a sudden something happened. I think it was probably a peer-to-peer interaction. And I remember like really wanting that and and I think it was part of this whole phase that went along with a couple of those like scholastic, like 6th grade workbook kind of things that would go through different subjects. And I think I got enough. Like what was important for me in that moment, and I feel like the way that my mom handled it was kind of like, yeah, like you don't have very good handwriting, but if you want it, like do this and you'll learn how to do it. Like it's practice. And I think I did practice for a while and I got my handwriting passable, but like even today I was at work and I'm working part-time at a plant nursery right now. And I'd like potted up a bunch of plants and they needed tags on them. And it was like a job that I passed off to someone else. Cause I was like, if I'm writing a retail Latin plant name, it just shouldn't be me that writes it. And at this point in my life, like I'm super comfortable with that. And it's actually the kind of thing where like in an interview, like I've brought it up in multiple interviews, they always ask you like, what's your big flaw or like, what's your worst? And I still, to some degree, like if I'm handwriting, I feel like I have a significant sort of handicap. But it doesn't really bother me that much, if that makes sense.
I feel like I have to say you come by that genetically. Because I also would be handing off those labels to someone else to write.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
Oh, now you're muted. Tanya, I thought about this question because Laura sent them out ahead of time. And I think when I first read it, the end part is like, were you not embarrassed? Embarrassed?
Self-conscious.
I was like, no, that's so silly. And then I was like, oh, wait, no, that's like actually one of the stories that I bring up. One of the reasons that I think drove me, that I remember, and this is probably not the only reason that drove me to like want to do more academic work. And that ultimately I think was one of the catalysts that like ended up putting me into high school or that path was that I remember I had like a couple friends that were in public school, and I remember one telling me about like she was learning about wars, and like, do I know anything about wars now? No. Is it relevant to my life? Not at all. But I remember being like, she knows about wars, and I don't even know anything about wars. Like, I need to know something about wars, which is such a bizarre thing because that's not like anything that I even am interested in really. But I can recall like a couple times feeling like, oh, I don't know this thing. But I think similar to what Jesse was just talking about with writing, it was kind of like recognizing that made me then motivated to do it. Would I have been motivated to do it if my parents told me to learn about wars? Most definitely not. I can recall a few, I was unschooled, but my parents who are on this call, and I think they're muted, so, but my mom will always joke about how she like made me learn cursive writing. And I remember going on, like we went on this 2-month road trip once when I was 10, which we could do because I was homeschooled or unschooled. But I remember her telling me that I had to write in my journal and I had to write in cursive. And so like occasionally they would pick, like one time my dad made me write a paper about Florence Nightingale. And I remember this. I remember these instances because they were so few and far between, but I remember disliking it so much. And my mom will laugh about the cursive because she didn't know that like kids nowadays don't really need to know cursive. And I got to high school and like nobody was writing in cursive, which she was convinced they were going to make me do. So I do recall like times throughout my years being unschooled in which they would like pick something that they wanted me to do from an academic standpoint. And I remember I would do it. I probably really didn't like, there was probably a little bit of me telling them I didn't want to. And I'm like, but I don't know. I think that throughout my experience, something that I'm thankful for is the opportunities for like diverse education that I've had or diverse educational experiences. And so like the fact that I was primarily unschooled, but there were moments in my experience of that, like having to have done something that somebody else wanted me to do, I think is like telling of how the world is. Like sometimes in work, I have to do things that people want me to do that I don't want to do. But as a whole, I picked my job. I liked my job. As a whole, I picked unschooling. I like unschooling, and it was okay with me if sometimes I had to like do something that they wanted me to.
Thank you.
I was thinking back to what I said earlier, and it really is at a certain age. So I remember my neighbors asking me, neighbor kids at an earlier age, like, do you know what 7 times 8 is? And I was like, and I didn't rush home and want to learn my multiplication tables. It was just like, okay, that person thinks it's really important to know this, you know? So it was at a certain time when it just became important. And then all of a sudden, you know, it's important and it happens. But I think around those times when we were asking for it, we would do, you know, a couple months of a math class or a couple months of a writing class to kind of get that experience. And whether within a month or two we were kind of over it and it wasn't exciting, it was kind of that getting tastes of it and, you know, being exposed to little bits of it at a time.
I have a distinct memory of us learning the state capitals at your house, Amy.
Yeah, but do you know why we were doing that?
I remember it was out of this sense of insecurity, but no.
No, it's because Natalie went to 4th grade and my sister went to 4th grade and she was learning it, so we learned it.
Yeah, so
like, but yeah, I guess
with her.
Yeah, the other kids had learned how to do this, and
yeah, and like we didn't know. I just remember like going over the song over and over again and thinking like, I don't know, like we'd get stuck and be like, like what's North Carolina? Like,
I think we should pick a new topic too, because I think we're focusing on when we realized we didn't learn something, you know, when we didn't know something, and that's not really what unschooling was full of. That was just kind of the moments when the things that we weren't at grade level, you know, became, you know, a subject or a parent.
What was the experience of entering school like for you?
I'll start. I did go to El Camino College when I was like 16, and I don't think I was quite right. I think I was still young. I was too young where I needed a little more parent support that then was available to me at the moment. And then I got some working experience and worked at a charter school. And then around the age of 18 or 19 was really wanting to go to college and went to SMC and took the placement test that pretty much everybody takes when they get to community college. And I was convinced there was going to be all these things that I was going to be asked of that I didn't know or that I hadn't learned in high school and was going to be so important. And based on the placement test, I placed in a little below college level English and math. So I took a couple extra classes for that, but I was learning at my level, and the people sitting next to me had graduated high school and were still testing into those classes, and it really was really smooth at that point. But I was convinced that, on the first day they were going to say, do this, and I was not going to know, how to do that. And that really was not the case.
Yeah, I remember kind of like I was saying, like starting SMC, and I was just like really excited. I remember like the first time that I got to take a test with a Scantron, and I thought it was like really cool how you get to like, be really meticulous and fill in these little bubbles, and you put your name at the top, and you can write your name like in a cool way, or maybe I just thought you could write your name in a cool way and maybe nobody was doing that. And I remember like kind of looking around and being like, oh, like, why isn't everybody seeming as excited as I am? It seemed to me that like the first couple of years I was at SMC, a lot of the other students were, I had conversations with them too, and they were fresh out of high school and they were feeling kind of burnt out, which obviously, especially if you're going to school, every day, all day for your whole life, like sitting in a desk, like that's the last thing you want to keep doing, or you're just really tired. So I definitely remember noticing that. And yeah, like, I don't know, I never really felt insecure or like I was behind. I placed in like the lowest math, but I placed in the highest English. And I was okay with that because I was interested in writing and I wasn't interested in math. So I didn't care what math class I was placed in, even if it was the lowest. But yeah, it was exciting. It wasn't always exciting, but when I first started, I was really into it. Everything seemed really new to me in a great way.
I started school in high school, and I remember Kate, the Scantron thing is funny to me because like in high school you have to do like before I had even been to school, and like the first week of school, the English teacher, she puts out all these Scantron tests on all of our desks, and she says like, okay, you have your test and your Scantron, and like bubble in your answers. And I remember sitting there and I'm just like looking at my paper, and I have this pencil, and this woman is talking about bubbles, and like I have no clue. And they must have like seen my face because I have no poker face. She walked over to me and she said, "You've never taken a Scantron before." And she was very obviously excited to get to teach me how to take a Scantron. So I had less excitement about that and more confusion. But I remember there were definitely good things and bad things about starting school for me. I think something that people always ask me was like, was it hard to make friends between my social since you're homeschooled, which is like some stereotype that someone made up that I've been followed with for my life. But like never, that was never the case. And I remember being like excited about having so many people around, which I'm sure would not be everybody's experience, but I was like, I could be friends with you or I don't have to be. but like I have so much opportunity for like all these people that are my age, which was exciting. And then also I remember like the fall being hard, and I don't know if it was hard because I was like, it was just different, and I was sitting in a desk and doing something that somebody else wanted me to do, and like having to ask to go to the bathroom, which was bizarre. So there was definitely the sense of just like it being so different that I think was hard for me. And honestly, I think like being away from my mom like all day was hard if I like look back on it, which I don't know if I realized then, but I remember coming home days and crying. And I think it was like I was used to like waking up like, Mom, where are you? We'd like hang out, I'd have a play date, and now it was like I am alone all day with lots of people, but it's not my mom. And I remember like sitting in a park with her crying about this, and she said, you know, like, let's hold out until winter break, and if you want to quit, you can quit. And so like, let's just give it a good go, but know that that option is there to leave. And I think two things for me: one, knowing that it was okay to leave, and knowing that it was my choice to enter in the first place, like made me stick at it. And I'm sure I would be happy with whatever decision I made if it were to leave or to stay, but I decided to stay, and I'm happy I did because I had a good experience in the end, but it was hard starting out.
Yeah, I started college when I was about 18. I do remember that I really wanted to start a little bit earlier, like a quarter or two earlier. And I wasn't able to because I had unschooled in such a way that I didn't have like a high school transcript or something. Where I ended up waiting an extra 2 quarters. And I remember that kind of bummed me out. I remember the Scantrons. I remember being really scared to take my first Scantron test because I was scared I was going to screw up the Scantron. Like I was really nervous about filling in the bubbles right and just screwing that up somehow. I don't know. I also, I guess to some extent feel like, you know, I went to school at 18 and I started unschooling at like 6. And I don't know. I feel like I can talk about funny stories about going to college. I think like getting, you know, I have a master's degree now, so I think that like I could go to college when I wanted to. But I also suspect for a lot of parents that would be watching this video, like it's a much younger, like children that we're talking about. Like if you're graduating nursery school, you're starting at like that 6-year-old, and I to some degree, like I agree with Andy in that I think choice is important, and I also want to I don't know. I don't know if it's the best idea to be watching this and like deciding that you're going to unschool your kid all the way till they go to college. And that I think it looks very different depending on what school you're going into and what age you're at. And I think my general advice on going to school from unschooling would be towards like an alternative school. In general, like I could imagine it being really challenging to go from unschooling to like a 4th grade public school because your parent had to go back to work. I don't know. I can't speak about that experience directly, but I do feel like it's not on the panel also, maybe. I think that's my bit.
Jen, I see you have a question. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. Hi, Laura. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you so much to all of you for sharing your stories. With regards to going to college and university, our daughter is only 4, but I am just thinking that far ahead, and my experience is very different than hers. I went to public school my entire life. So I was curious about, for those of you who did homeschool for your academic career before going to college, how the application process was for you then, and if you felt like your applications were, I guess just how it was in general, because I really have such a little small concept of what that would be like if you're not coming from a public school, I guess.
I'll start if you want. I mean, I think it's varied. I think for people who have a idea of a college they want to go to and they know they want to go to, that they want to start that early, then it would take some prepping and doing some more, traditional academics, and depending on the college you want to go to, taking SATs and all of that stuff and applying. Some of us just went to community college for a year or two, and then you have your transcripts there, and it doesn't, not all colleges want SATs and stuff above that to transfer. So I think it really just kind of depends. I had a specific college in mind that I wanted to go to, so I didn't apply to, a handful of colleges and write tons of different applications. But my application definitely talked a lot about my alternative schooling and how, the things I was excited to do and why I wanted to be there. And I think getting to share some of that was a unique perspective, to have a unique story like that. Anyone?
Yeah, like you were saying, Amy, I mean, I think it definitely depends on the school. I know when I knew what school I wanted to go to too, so I only applied to the one that I ended up going to. And I mean, I don't know what it would have been like if I was just coming from high school, but I know since I was coming from a community college, I had a lot of transfer credit. And I think in my case, that was really helpful because I was able to skip a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have wanted to do. And yeah, I guess that's it. I mean, yeah, it depends on the school, but I think I would imagine a good school also cares about your uniqueness, and I mean, you'll make it work.
Wait. No, I'm muted.
Thank you.
I think I would add that the community college thing was really important for me too. I started at a community college, and it was also sort of the story that I had in my head about going to college from the time I was 12 or 13, or starting to think about it. That was kind of the unschool path. Basically because you can start earning college credit, and then that's what they look for to transfer. So I definitely didn't have the vision of turning 18 and moving away to go be a freshman at college somewhere. And I think part of that was I wasn't in high school, so it wasn't really something that I was aware I was missing at the time. Having gone back to school, I can see that. And I mean, in some ways, honestly, I'm thankful that I sort of partied and went to school at separate times in my life. And on my undergraduate campus, I think there was a lot of, and working as a student aide, there was a lot of, I don't know, sort of burnout. But I also want to say, I think in regards to higher education and unschooling, one of the opportunities that I think unschooling offers is sort of an opportunity for you to do, I don't know, if your child gets really passionate about something and starts engaging with it, sort of as an unschooled kid, you can have a lot more access to doing much higher quality work at a much younger age. I don't know if that makes sense. Like for me, it was skateboarding. If USC offered like a PhD in skateboarding, I could have gotten into that really well at like 17 because I had a hell of a resume of like building ramps. I ran a skate shop out of my garage. I had all these friends, you know, like, so I think in some sense that's the thing to think about too, is like if it becomes really clear that your kid is like really passionate about entomology or, you know, just like whatever they're really into, I don't know, I think that is something you can think about and support. And I suspect that if you look at like a lot of kids who start college early, I bet are unschooled, if that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's my rant. I don't know if that made any sense.
Jesse, do you mean that sometimes a child, say, who does become completely engaged with a subject because it really does, they've discovered something that strikes, you know, that they're passionate about, that those might be the people who go into college early? Is that what you're talking about? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying, that what I'm talking about. Like, I think it's yeah, it's just possible if you're really, really into something and you sort of, as an unschooler, I feel like have that time to really obsessively do something. I don't know, like you can, I don't know how to say this. In some ways, I feel like I was more impressive socially when I was like 15 or 16 because I didn't, the way that I don't know, maybe I'm just ranting. Like I was a little different. I think you stand out unschooling. And if you get really passionate about something and you have a 16-year-old or a 14-year-old who is obsessed with bugs, I think it makes sense to have them write an email to the entomology lab at UCLA. And just ask a question, you know, or just kind of like get into whatever world you're trying to get into early.
Sort of like all the prereqs in the academic, tracking yourself with what you're not tracking.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense, Jess. And like, I remember when I started college and people were like, you have to pick a major, like you have to pick the thing you're interested in and then devote all your time to that. And they're like, oh my gosh, I get to take any class I want to take. And I was like, oh, I had to do that when I was a kid. Like anything I was interested in, my parents like facilitated that learning for me because like they could devote that time. Whereas when you're in school, it's like you have to just learn everything the same way that everybody does it. So you don't have time to like specialize in anything, which you could do when you're a kid, which is cool.
I just want to mention the junior college system that we have in California, because one of the things that the junior college system provides, and actually most of my kids took advantage of this, is the opportunity to take everything. So it's kind of the same possibility that exists that we talk about for nursery school. You can take art history and you can take astronomy and you can, you know, all of these different subjects. And it gives you a chance, I think, to start to find that passion if you haven't found it yet.
Tanya had her hand up.
So I'm not sure if this is going to take us away from the question at hand, and so I don't want to distract. So if you guys have more to say on this, just let me know. Mine can come later. But so I think my understanding when you guys say you were all unschooled for a big portion of your childhood, that means that you had interests and your parents saw those interests and supported them. And I so believe in that. And I know all your parents, I know how amazing all your parents are, which makes me doubt my ability to do the same thing. But it's so what I want to do. So I'm kind of interested in, if you remember, kind of the nitty gritty of, I can see what Zavi's interests are. I don't always know, okay, what's the thing I'm going to bring in that's going to be like, yes, this is just the thing. You know, it's like, it feels like I'm not following, here it's all laid out. There's so much comfort in here. It's all laid out. You do this, this, and this, and this, and there they go. You know, it's like me having to recognize and be creative. And I'm so overwhelmed, especially as he gets older. You know, when he was little and it was like, okay, I've had 10 years of nursery school under my belt. I know what to do with a 5-year-old. Here I go. And now he's 9 and I'm like, I don't know. His math skills are going to be beyond mine soon. And I'm kind of like, what's the nitty gritty of how your parents supported your interests? If you have like specific examples you remember, that would be awesome.
I mean, I think it probably varied throughout the time, but at one point we would sit down each week and talk about, what do we want to do this week? You know, what types of field trips, what types of classes would you be interested in? And did that planning together. And then, let's see, the nitty gritty of learning the specific things that we didn't want to learn. Is that what you're?
No, totally. This is completely separate from my concern before. This is like, for example, Zavi just got a brand new skateboard today. He picked up one of his dad's old skateboards last week, and now he wants to learn to skateboard. And so his dad helped him buy a brand new skateboard because all of his dad's skateboards are warped from being left out in the rain and blah, blah, blah over the years. Okay, so we supported him in his interest by figuring out how to get him a new skateboard. Mm-hmm. And what else do I do? Do I put a ramp out and back? Do I wait for him to ask for that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you could do it yourself or you could do it together, but like you could go to the library and see what books are about skateboarding and yeah, I mean, ask him. I'm guessing within a few weeks he's going to need to learn like how to skateboard, and then within a few weeks he's going to want to, you know, up his game, and then that might involve ramp building and that stuff.
Yeah, I can say the first budget I ever worked out in my life was to build the skate ramp in my backyard. And I would say that skateboarding was actually like, if I had a major in unschooling, it really was skateboarding. And so things like, yeah, I really wanted a skateboard ramp in my backyard. And my mom told me that she would pay for it if I drew the plans with my brother Josh and like got the materials list and like did all the budgeting. And then worked with him to actually build the ramp. I did other things, like she drove me to skate parks a lot. Like we used to always sort of go on these little adventures to go to different neighborhoods to go skateboarding. It looked like me sort of making friends skateboarding, and then it's like driving to support that playover of like taking us out to Chino to go skateboarding. Sort of if you get really into skateboarding, there's all these iconic places around Los Angeles that you can go and explore and do that. And sort of as I got older and I started exploring that with my friends, I mean, in some sense, I think part of me picking skateboarding was like, it was something that my mom really had absolutely nothing to do with, except for sort of being that gatekeeper of like, I want this ramp, like, okay, draw the plan, like, what's it going to look like? Like, how much do we have to spend? Like, we don't have a truck. Does Home Depot rent a truck? Like, you should call Home Depot and see if you can rent a truck. Like, kind of just that basic problem solving to like get the job done and bringing in sort of skills as they become relevant. But I also like, I think that like that modeling could be really important. Like Zavi's about to pass you in math. And I think also like being aware that in some ways you can be the teacher by modeling being the student. Like that might be an important moment where like he gets it more than you, and you have to like model what it's like to try and figure out this damn problem that is just, you know, I don't know, too much. I lose calculus. I don't get it. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's my piece.
Susanna, I saw you raise your hand earlier.
Yeah. My question goes kind of like in the same direction that Tanya said about like how do you support your kids' aspirations or what they like to do, and also like I know, for example, my daughter likes to do certain things, and also like asking parents. And actually, I was gonna say this is like a nice view to see kids and parents together, and great parents and great kids too. Anyway, nice community. But I just wanted to say that like if I have, because I see the interest of my kids, and but also I see there's distractions too, I will say, because there's other things like they like to watch TV too, and like to do other things, right? And then, for example, she likes to play the guitar, and then when I say, oh, what about the guitar? Because like I'm bored, right? Like I don't know what to do, and I'm like, oh, what about the guitar? And she's good at it and all of that. And then she's like, no, I want to do something else. So okay, but I know she's good at the other thing, or like sewing or something like that. But she decides to do other things. So how do you support that? And how do you? Because I have a hard time, and then I hear myself talking, and I'm like, I'm just like a coach, right? Like, and I want to be free, and that like she can follow that. But also, I know there's other things that, and I don't know how to, I don't know, be too controlling, but also I don't know, like have that opportunity for them to actually follow what they are interested in.
I was thinking about something like that the other day because I remember I like had this memory come to me of like when I was maybe in my early 20s, and I was like, I wanted to buy something, and I was thinking like, man, like when I was a kid, I bought like, when I had money, I would buy like food or like all these like art things, like new pencils. Like, why didn't I just save all my money when I was a kid? Then I would have all this money now to buy whatever it was that I wanted. And just now when you said that, I was thinking about all the different things that I was into as a kid, just like fuse beads and Barbies and horses and Playmobil. And I kind of was wondering what my mom thought about that, because I felt like I had so many like little projects that I would be so obsessed with and then completely over, like, you know, 2 weeks later or whatever. Like how that was, or if you noticed that, or how that was for you as a parent who would also buy those things for me.
Well, we did a
Before
lot
I
of
had
yard
money.
sailing. Yeah, and you learned about how to calculate sale prices, and we'd wait, you'd look at the package and calculate what's the better deal. Is a Barbie by itself a better deal, or with 5 outfits? The Barbie was a little funky looking. So we kind of used some of those math opportunities, and you would wait. I mean, I don't remember it may seem like you got them right away, but we had to go and we would sit for a long time in aisles while you examined the packages and figured out how you could get the most from the money that was available. Yeah. Maybe that's why you recycle so much now.
Yeah.
Susanna, I feel like I hear 2 different things. It's like, that she has a bunch of things that she's into and she's really good at, and it's not necessarily, or at least I'm not hearing that there's like an area that you really are concerned about or you wish you would do more of, but it's still like, okay, you're just going to sit there watching TV all day, or, you know, could we be spending our time better? And I think as unschoolers, you still want to be free and give, you know, because you can notice that when you say, why don't you do this or that they don't, but it's still like your family values. Like I'm still don't feel comfortable just sitting here and watching you guys watch TV all day long. You know, is there other stuff you want to do? And so instead of just like suggesting like so casually, they kind of they're a little smarter than that. Like they know when we're pushing. So it's kind of, it's each parent I feel like struggles a little bit different, like has a different area of comfort. Like, and I think that's fine. Like if that's your family value and you know, this is the way we spend our time on a day-to-day basis, it's kind of like your family style. And that if there isn't an area that you're worried about, you know, it's not like, oh, I want you to practice your guitar, you know, or that, then don't, I guess, not pushing it, but that if she comes to you, I'm bored, you know, I watch TV and it's like, you know, I'm not comfortable with this watching TV now, you know, and they'll figure out the rest. It's not you suggesting too many things, so you could do this or this, or, you know, or that it's important to you. But if it is important to you, that's okay too, and you guys could have those conversations, you know.
Yeah, and I guess it's just like a matter of having also different projects, and it's just like, because I see like she was making a song and then she stopped and then she's not doing it anymore, and I'm like, you could have, like, I'm thinking to myself, she could have continued and, you know, finish the song, and, you know, but she doesn't want to do it anymore. And I'm like, okay, so I don't know, to me it's like there's, and even sometimes it's not even just like watching TV, but reading, which is fine too. But I don't know, like in a way, also I'm asking like how, like growing up for you, like how did you feel like you wanted to have this project, like for example, making ramps or building the ramp, and how much of that was all by yourself, and also like something that like Jessie, you said that your mom was just the keeper, like, or she will drive you or something. And so, but at what point, or maybe she's still too young to, you know, do things like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that. I think the other thought I was having when you were speaking earlier about the sort of, I'm so bored, I don't want to do that. And I think that one of the things with unschooling, really parenting advice that I would give is just like use modeling. And so like, if that's something you notice that you feel like she like started a song and didn't finish it and walked away from it, like if that's something you notice, like is there a project that you've started that you haven't finished that you're like, oh, I really want to finish this so it's done? Like narrating your own process of how you go about finishing a project, or like being conscious of like, oh my God, I've been watching TV for too long, I'm too bored, I need to get out of the house, kind of stuff, and just like owning it sort of as like you. And I think that on some level, like your children are more, I don't know, like they pick that kind of stuff up. Like you say things around them and then they end up saying them. And I think that's the kind of language around like, I don't know, she just might not even thought of the importance of finishing the song or decided it was something important or not important. And you might model that and she might decide, I don't want to finish the song, like I don't care. But it just bringing a little bit of, I don't know, just like modeling around that. I think the screen time is really hard, and I've thought about that a lot, like in the context of having my own kids and like how to handle that, because I feel like I'm about to turn 31 and sort of this last generation where like we had screens, but like we didn't have cable in my house. The internet wasn't, like, it was a thing, but it wasn't a kid's thing. And so I really didn't have, I don't know, it's a whole new sort of world. I would be inclined to suggest some, like, I don't know, if there's a way to have like a timer on the box or something. I try to avoid having it be like a power struggle each time the TV goes on and off, to be like in your control. I don't know. I think that can end up as a problematic dynamic, just like going forward, because it just escalates. And like also to maybe if you set, like if you do set a timer on the TV and the limit, to like have the experience where you're watching the show that you're watching and you get bummed that it just shut off in the middle of your cooking show, or like whatever it is that you're into. You're like, oh man, I'm gonna watch it again tomorrow. But I really think the power of those kind of simple, just sort of modeling redirects, like seeing what they're struggling with and then trying to find the analogy in like your life or with what you're doing, and then narrating out loud your process of thinking through it. I don't know, if I contribute one thing to this unschooling panel, I think that idea should be it.
I don't know what it would be like to be a parent and have to like grapple with the ideas of limiting screen time or like wanting to guide your children, and trying to like draw myself back purely to what I felt as a child that was unschooled, that did have TV. I can like did experience boredom, and not what it was like to be a parent. Like I can remember when we got cable when I was like 8. We moved to a new house. My baby brother was born and we got cable. And I remember my parents would like go to bed and I would get till like 12 in the morning watching Nick at Night, maybe 1, I don't know. Like they were always asleep before me. And there was a period of time where I watched TV all the time. Like I remember that our TV was over this way and the couch was facing this way, and my neck started to hurt because I would watch the TV like this. Like that I recall. And I recall I used to play The Sims on the computer, and like when The Sims came out and we got it, I distinctly remember it was a Wednesday because that was park day, and I woke up in the morning and I played Sims for like 5 hours straight, and I did not get up from the chair. And my mom was like, Andy, we are going to the park. Like, I need you to put down the mouse. We're going to the park. And I was like really bummed that I had to leave. But I don't, and they might remember this completely differently, but I don't remember that they really limited my screen time. Granted, there weren't phones, there weren't iPads, it wasn't always there. And I didn't always watch TV forever. And now as an adult, I don't have a television in my home, but like there was a period of time where I like this concept of like overdosing on TV. And now I think I'm kind of like, I can't watch TV in the day. Like it kind of makes me feel a little depressed. Like I'm wasting my time. But I feel like I was given the opportunity to just like overdo it for a short period of time. But they might remember it totally differently. And I also remember being really bored sometimes. And I remember my mom sometimes like not always having an idea, because she's not going to always, like there were lots of plans that I remember, like every Tuesday after our yoga class, she'd take some of us home and we'd make pie, because we were all like really into making pies. And that was like a plan that she facilitated every week. But then like some days we didn't have plans. I remember like grabbing the nursery school roster and like, you know, being like 7, 8 and like flipping through it and looking at the names and like, what friends do I want to call? And like, I had to be in charge of making my plans if I was really bored sometimes, because like, they're with you 24/7. And I can imagine that it's practical to always have something for you to do.
Thank you.
How did you deal with opinions of other people about your alternative education?
I feel like one thing that being educated alternatively,
Right up.
you're aware of that from the beginning. So, I mean, a lot of people, whether it's kids or your aunt or this or that, ask you those questions. What did you learn today? Or, you know, like things that are not applicable to your life and feels like they don't get it. But in the conversations that we'd have with our parents, it was, yeah, they kind of don't get it. They're used to the one way that a lot of people do, you know, do things. And that right there was the conversation of diversity and, you know, understanding that some people don't understand things they're not used to, or, you know, some of that stuff. And I think, you know, at times in your childhood or puberty or this or that, you're a little more, you know, concerned or that of what people think of you, but especially getting older and becoming an adult that was just as, you know, adjusted to life as my cousins or this or that, that it was empowering, you know, like you had those thoughts about me and it didn't turn out that way, you know, in a way. Or, yeah, I don't remember it being too big of an issue. You know, it might have been a bigger issue if, you know, if one parent was really, you know, critiqueful, or, you know, if it was something going on more regularly, but it was usually just a weird comment from, you know, the one aunt at a family dinner, or the kids on the, you know, street that were like, are you at recess right now? I'm not playing, you know, but you were just very aware that people didn't totally get it. And that was almost kind of odd, you know, because why didn't you get it? It was just life. We were just playing and doing our thing.
I think empowering is a cool way to put it. I definitely thought it was really cool that, like, I had this alternative learning background, and like I still think it's cool. And I think people are impressed when they hear that that was part of my background, and I like am a functioning independent adult that like has the same opportunities as anybody else that went to school. Like it doesn't make me different in any negative ways, and I think it is empowering. I like the way you put that in.
I think it's also kind of telling of like, because I think people still, like, when they find out that I was homeschooled, they're like, wow, what? Like, wow, like, you know, did you have friends? Like, what did you do all day? Like, all these dumb questions. But I think people also have like such a like tie to going to high school, and like it's seen as such like an important moment in your life. And I think it's hard for people to like imagine somebody not doing that. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. I would add to that. I would say that for me also, I remember getting a fair amount of attention from strangers when I was younger, because we would be out and about, and it would be, you know, 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, and we'd be at Starbucks getting iced tea or something like that. And the guy in line would be like, why aren't you in school today? What do you got going on? And I remember like pretty early on, like my mom like having a conversation with me and being like, look, Jesse, when like strangers ask you if you want to, like, it's totally okay to lie. Like, this is a situation where when the guy at Starbucks starts asking you, like, questioning you why you're not in school, if you don't want to deal with him, just say you have a dentist appointment. Like, there are people that don't understand, and I feel like that happened a couple of times and it is a strange experience, because I at the time felt great unschooling or homeschooling or whatever, but every once in a while there would be like some stranger, or like I think of one of my good friends in high school, Montana, his mom, Pam, but who, like, people who were genuinely concerned, who, when they understood what was going on, like when they understood that I was 12 and I'd never taken a math or English class, that I think there were people who felt that it was like some form of child abuse, or they were concerned about that. They were like, there was a concern for me. And that was the energy that I feel like my mom was like, just lie, just tell him you're at a dentist appointment. Yeah, I don't know. And I think that was important for me. And I will think back to like in that moment, like when I did that, it felt empowering. So it was like, I'm lying to this adult here. Like, he's kind of an asshole.
My mom said I could.
Yeah, like that was an okay, like, and I think it was like an important lesson about, yeah, diversity and tolerance and difference, and that like people do all different things. And like it's important that like unschooling is a particular word that some people are familiar with and it means something, but homeschooling is a pretty general term. And like still when I meet people, like a lot of people that homeschool in this country homeschool for fundamentalist religious reasons. And I feel like the thing that I have in common with them is the lack of like a public school. But that we had very different educational and like sociocultural trajectories in the way that we navigated the world like that, you know? I don't know. Yeah, I think that's the end of my rant there.
What was your greatest challenge during the years that you were unschooled?
I'll start. For me, I'm the oldest of three, and when I was around middle school, beginning of high school age, my parents got divorced, and my mom had to go back to work. And at that point, I stayed homeschooling because I was already hanging out with my, pretty close friends, and had the ability to stay home on my own if needed because I was 13 or 14 at that point. But I still think that those years were probably the most challenging because I didn't actually have a parent that was available to support me through homeschooling. So I feel like during the high school years, there was some things that I wanted that either, I could have gone to traditional or other schools to get, or could have found through homeschooling communities, but didn't really have that access because I didn't have a parent that was fully available to me. And I also, we also unschooled without transcripts. Like we didn't do it through a, private school or anything like that. So at one point, I had interests in going to high school, and it wasn't easy enough to kind of slide in there, and I chose not to do it. So those are the only challenges that came up for me.
Anybody else on that one? Andy?
I think something for me that was challenging was, and like just the number of people that were in our group was kind of small. And that might be a function of like when we homeschooled. It's more common these days, and it wasn't back then. Our group was really small. And so like, I think one, the number of friends that you had was like just lower. Not that like we weren't good at socializing or what have you, but like you just, and they're not all your age, which I remember back then thinking was like cool. Like, and I remember feeling like I was more mature because I can have long conversations with adults and older kids, but which maybe was true a little bit. I don't know. But there's just fewer people to be friends with, or that was my experience and a challenge that I dealt with. And then I think also, like, I don't know how to put this, but just being a kid, there's times when sometimes there's conflict between friends, and that can be hard. And I think for me, I think it was maybe harder because I didn't have like a larger group of people that I could go to. So like if there was maybe friends that you weren't clicking with, or it was a little bit cliquey in the group at that point, like I didn't necessarily have a lot of other people that I could hang out with. And that's just me speaking for myself. I don't know what everybody else's experiences were, but I really do think that a lot of that is a function of the size of the group at that time. And like all all the people on this panel that are sitting here today, I still consider my close friends, and like I definitely made friendships that I feel like have lasted my life. But yeah, it was a smaller group back then, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely resonate with that smaller group piece of it. And I feel like you, for me, I think that did become a challenge at one point around the time I was like 13 or 14. I kind of became a little more cognizant of that. And that was kind of when I started skateboarding and sort of bicycling and scootering. And like, I found all these friends. And then for me, I really, like through those years in high school, like I stayed really close with Amy, but also like had my whole world, like I sort of socially felt like I went to high school. Like I hung out with the majority of my peer group was going to school. And I guess in some sense, I'm trying to think of like challenges. I was going to answer that originally, and then it's hard for me to think of. For me at the time, I was so not, like there wasn't much of a difference between unschooling and living. And it's hard for me to like think back and separate that into like what were unschooling challenges versus like what were, you know, I mean, I was unschooling while my dad died. Like that was a big challenge, but it also had nothing to do with unschooling really. I don't know. I liked what you said about the peer group, and I feel like that was something that I also reached a point that I was aware of, and I like found that, I don't know, like met that challenge. And it sounds like that's kind of what you're saying too. Like that was one of the things you ended up then going to school.
Or for other people I know, like the homeschool conferences have opened up bigger communities, but it's like once a year you get your homeschool dance and you know some of that stuff. But our group at the time when we were looking for more social did kind of get smaller, and
yeah.
I feel like those big conferences and high school proms and stuff weren't quite around when we were that age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think for me, there was also like a cultural sort of coming of age thing where like I reached a point where I was aware that I grew up in this very particular sort of social political environment, you know, like we unschooled, we had our like very tight knit community. And there was a point at which I was like, wait, there's like a whole other outside world. And where I think I was kind of rebellious and angsty and like I want to get into that outside world, like, you know. I mean, and I think I did it to some extent, but I also feel like I came back and I feel like you all are really good friends. Yeah, I don't know. I'm ranting.
I like what you said, Jesse, about how like unschooling, homeschooling, and life kind of, they didn't really feel separate. And I think that's like why I've been like trying to think of something, but couldn't really think of anything that was difficult specifically pertaining to homeschooling, because it kind of flowed in and out of just living my life. And everything that I was doing with my school just felt natural. And yeah, the timing felt natural of doing different things. I never really felt like my homeschool group was small, but I'm also like very comfortable with small groups. I remember when we kind of like joined up with the Riverside people. I remember that was exciting, and that felt like, oh my God, we have so many people now, when it was really not that many still. But yeah, I mean, I can't really think of any big struggles that I had with homeschooling.
And I mean, I think as long as this is just some advice for parents, that as long as you're in tune with your children, you know when they're thriving, and you know when there's an area that they're starting to avoid, or you know that things come up. But I lost my train of thought. But that no, that you're just I lost my train of thought. Oh, sorry, but that you're doing it together. That unless you know that you get that as parents you notice that, and that's when you have the conversations. Or should we go try out the group over there? I want to go try a class with that group, and you know you'll notice when your kids are really excited and they're planning playovers, this and that, and all their friends are really new, and then after some years in a small group, it's your family, you know, and you're ready for some new stuff, and it's usually pretty obvious in kids. At least I've even seen in the homeschoolers these days, you know, I want to try this, I want to try that. And as long as you guys are there for them and have the resources to kind of be with them in that journey, then you'll find, you know, a lot of that stuff is available to you.
Something I've thought about along these lines more, really when I was working with a family who was homeschooling or unschooling, who went through nursery school, and I was babysitting a lot. But also I would add the modeling piece. Like if you feel like that sort of going into a new social environment and like having I don't know, playing t-ball or going to a, you know, Pokemon card game tournament or, you know, like whatever it is, that I would say that's another thing that you could model. Like if your kid is feeling really nervous about doing that, maybe they want to come to a new yoga class with you where you're going into the new sort of environment, and they can, whatever, play Game Boy in the corner, or like just kind of get like, if that's hard, I would encourage modeling it. And like, yeah.
Susanna, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I don't know if this question has been asked already, but just wanted to ask if you felt like you were missing like academically things as you got older, or like I'm starting, like before I was thinking more of doing like unschooling, and we're still thinking of doing it, but I know there's different ways of unschooling and all of that, and now with all the things that are going on right now, I've been thinking about how we need to have critical thinking, and you know, and then I'm thinking, how can I support that with my kids and have critical thinking, and then I'm thinking about, I go, you know, and say, oh, maybe we need to do math, you know, because that way they can exercise their brain, and you know, and have all these things, and looking for things that we can me too, like help having that more, you know, not just sitting and getting things, of course. And I feel like unschooling, it's part of that, right? Like you give the opportunity for them to decide what they want to do and follow that, and also is critical thinking in a way. But did you feel that not having, you know, like academics, or I don't know how was your unschooling, if you had algebra or not, or I don't know, but not having some of those parts, you felt that you lacked going to college, or more in like in general life? And also I think about when I was in high school, for example, and like I like to draw, and I was a good drawer, I think. And when we got to high school and we had psychology as a class, I really liked it, so I chose to do psychology. But also I like drawing, and at the end I my path in college was psychology. So I feel also that if I don't give my kids, you know, like different things, if they are going to be able to choose something that is right for them, you know, like they'll be like just going towards what they really wanted at the beginning, but they didn't have the chance to. I think I have the two questions there, but sorry, but just if they are gonna have other opportunities, or if you found other opportunities outside what you got in at home in unschooling, that you said, oh, I actually want to pursue this or not or whatever. And the other one is the if you felt that you were lacking some things academically.
I think we answered the lacking academically part, like to a certain degree, as one of the first parts. The way that you phrased it made me kind of think about where because I was homeschooled until high school, and thinking about that transition for me, I remember like I was not interested in math at all, and I knew I was going to have to take math in high school. And I remember like multiple times I was like interested in math for like maybe a week every here and there, and like my parents like teaching me arithmetic. So like we had probably done like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division multiple times before I was, how old are you? Like 13 when I decided I wanted to go to high school. And it didn't stick because I was not interested in it for more than maybe a few days. And so they said, okay, if you want to go to high school, I think, and this was what our family did, but they were like, I think you probably need to have some kind of foundation for math. The rest, like, we'll figure it out. But we got a tutor because I didn't, and they didn't ask me to do more throughout my entire homeschool experience because I wasn't interested in it. And I think that the philosophy that like I remember most prominently from the times that I was homeschooling was like this idea of, well, like like learning through life experiences was the big thing that I remember talking about a lot when I was a kid, but then also like kids all learn at different paces and they're interested in different things. And if you're interested in it and you're ready to learn it, and that maybe is at a different time for every child, then you'll be able to learn it. And I think that I wasn't ready to learn those things until maybe I was motivated or I was ready. And so when I got a math tutor and like I went from actually having to learn my multiplication tables and memorizing them at some point to like we finished a pre-algebra textbook. So like when I was interested or it served a purpose for me, I was able to like fully invest my time and learn those things. But I think it really is a testament to the fact that like I was very ready to learn that at that time, and I was not obviously before because we tried a few times and it didn't stick, and I didn't want to.
And I think also like just because you're like presented with a bunch of subjects doesn't mean that you're gonna pick it up. Or I think that's like something that people think like, oh, I'll send my kids going to school and they're gonna learn all these things and they're gonna be a master, whatever. But I think that's one of the things that really worked for me with homeschooling was able to, was just I had the ability to try out lots of different things and really dive in deeply to things that I was interested in and, you know, try things. And then if I wasn't into it, I didn't, you know, have to stick with it for a whole semester.
I thought it was interesting that the wanting to make sure that they have the information so that they can think critically. And I think that definitely comes into play, but that when your kids are young, what you're doing now is giving them the actual ability and like the understanding or the ground for critical thinking, that people have different ways of finding things out, that people, do things at different times, that there isn't this one way that everybody's supposed to do it and everybody does it this. That's what cramps critical thinking a little bit, I think, And so, yeah, I think that, at some point, it's going to be when they're older and, they're interested and it works and it kind of flows into the subjects that they're, asking about. But,
Thank you.
When Jesse built that skate ramp, drawing up those plans, that's geometry. And then figuring out a way so that it actually manifested. I actually think that not being in a rigid curriculum is what supports critical thinking. I think in one of the things we've heard from almost everybody, I think, on the panel, is that it's hard work learning to write. That's a really laborious, and it requires practice. And if it's important to you, and at some point it will be, then you will be able to do it. And you will just do the work that's necessary to make it happen, which is really empowering. It means something that's really hard for me, I can do. I think too that, because I was part of this group as all of these people were children, is that they took classes. If they were interested in something and wanting to pursue it, they took classes. Sometimes they got together as a group and figured out how to raise the money. They had garage sales and lemonade stands. And then they found a teacher and they hired that teacher to teach them whatever it was that they were looking for. And that happened with numerous subjects that none of the parents were able to teach.
I think I would add on the critical thinking piece, sort of, and the psychology piece about modeling. And also, especially with young children, I feel like part of this is me reflecting on my unschooling experience. And really, I only have, I'm cognizant of maybe 9 or 10 on, and before that, it's kind of short little flashes. But I guess the point I would make would just be about modeling. I don't think that critical thinking is the kind of thing you can learn from a curriculum. It's the kind of thing you learn by watching someone else engage in critical thinking, if that makes sense. Watching or engaging with that problem yourself and trying to actually figure it out. And I would say the same thing with psychology and I guess I'm assuming your child is sort of just past nursery school age or around there. And it's on that level, I think in some way it's just words, just sort of you have the opportunity to introduce psychology just as an idea of there's a whole bunch of people who sort of have spent their whole lives trying to figure out how people think. And some people do it in conversation with, there's therapists, or there's that I think everything that a 6-year-old could need to learn about psychology, you could be a great entry point into that. And not just because you majored in psychology in college, but that kind of framing of, there are all these different fields and all these different perspectives and worlds that you can kind of jump into. I know some of them. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, totally, yeah. And I think also all you were saying too, conversations that we're having with our kids and about everything, you know, like just from shows and books. And it was interesting because Zoe right now is reading a lot of the Babysitter Club.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's read all of them, and she asked me, do you like the books? And I'm like, yeah, I like them. And I said, the only thing that I will change is that they will add more people of color. And I said, but it's understandable because it was another time. And, you know, so we started talking about the different times and, you know, how it has changed. And then they come up with a series on Netflix, and they put a lot of people of color, and they changed the stories. And we were watching it, and I said, see, that's what I was talking about. And she was like, oh yeah. And so, and it's interesting to see how in other aspects, like she has mentioned things like that, you know, like, so yeah, so I get it. It's like having conversations and modeling our critical thinking. And yeah.
That's such a good example.
Yeah.
It's such a history lesson that you get for like
right.
6.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
What do you see as the benefits of homeschooling?
You don't have to wake up early necessarily.
I mean, I always go back to just from the beginning, that everybody does things differently, and that people learn differently, and that different families and different parents have ideas about what's important and all of that. But that was our curriculum, you know, that learning about the world and learning about families and how people actually live and work in the world was our curriculum, more so than worrying if we knew what 7 times 7 was and types of things. But it definitely, I feel like, set the ground for that type of work or thinking.
I think getting to learn what I wanted when I wanted was something that I will always appreciate, having had the opportunity to do, and not having to learn anything when I didn't want to, and like just getting to have a play over. And like as a parent, I suppose you can like say, well, you're learning X, Y, or Z when you're doing that too, like social skills and conflict resolution and those kind of things too. But like as a young adult, like I remember being in college and thinking like how lucky I was to just get to play and like to just feel like I was a kid. I think Kate mentioned like kids in college, like, and noticing that burnout. And I went to high school, and there was definitely a little bit of that towards the end of high school. But I remember being like, well, I was 14 before I started this, and like I can't imagine having to sit in a seat for 8 hours a day until then, when I'm like a kid that probably wants to run around. And I'm not even somebody that likes to run around a lot. I kind of like probably a little bit more quiet and to myself, but even then. And I remember somebody asking my dad, like the story when I was a kid, somebody asked my dad, like, well, how is she going to know what it's like in the real world? And my dad's response to this person was like, how is sitting in a desk and listening to someone talk at you for 8 hours the real world? Like, she's forming friendships and getting to like live in the world. Whereas these kids are like forced to do whatever, I don't know, the state wants them to do. And that stuck with me for sure, like for the rest of my life. I remember being in high school, and we had to run a mile in 10th grade, and we had to run it in like 9 minutes. And I was really upset that we had to run it in 9 minutes because I didn't feel adequately prepared, and I didn't think that we were given the preparation to do this. And I like felt like it was well within my right to bring up my concern to the teacher. And like I remember having this conversation. She was like not happy that I wanted to debate her on this topic. And I just remember her being like, because Arnold Schwarzenegger was our governor at that point. And she was like, because Arnold Schwarzenegger says so. And I was like, why would you listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger, blah, 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 blah. But like, I think just the fact that I felt comfortable having that conversation with the adult is probably because I was given the opportunity to like have those conversations for my whole childhood with adults and people that were older than me. Like, I think I'm so grateful to feel confident in my own ideas and my own beliefs, and have had the opportunity to like be a kid and to have my ideas and my beliefs supported by not just my parents, who like I'm so thankful to have had, but by like all of the other adults that are here on this call and so many others that aren't here. Like, I really feel lucky to have had a community of parents that loved me and supported me. That's all.
Anybody?
Are you gonna say something, Jesse?
I don't know. I was thinking about it.
I'll say it and then maybe you'll be. Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, for real, like sleeping in, like, yeah, I don't know how I would have done, like waking up in the morning, like, for real, I'm not a morning person. I do it for nursery school. That's about it. But yeah, I think, and it's not like I would know any other way. So I had a lot of freedom, and that's like how I knew my life. Like, that's what I knew. And I'm really thankful that I got to go on a lot of trips with my family, like, and not just over the summertime, when most people were able to take family vacations or road trips or whatever. And I also got to spend a lot of time with my grandparents, which, you know, looking back on when many of them have passed away now, I'm so grateful that I had those times with them, and, you know, got to spend time with my grandma. She's the one who taught me how to sew, and that's a part of my art practice now, and I'll never forget that she taught me that. And, you know, spending time with my grandpa tinkering in his workshop, and just like stuff that I'm just so glad that I had the time for.
I guess I was gonna say like and I guess this depends on the family, but like the lack of sort of an authoritarian power structure. And I don't know how well I can really speak to this because I didn't experience it directly. I have a lot of friends that I don't know, just like had some pretty awful experiences sort of being punished or like harassed and searched by like school cops, or principals or things like that. And I it was really only later when I was part of Occupy, like in my mid-20s, and I had this realization that I was completely unaware of it at the time, but like I'm really happy that I didn't. I think your civil rights are different when you're a minor under the care of an institution, and I really never had that experience. Like, there was never anyone trying to, I don't know, like send me to the principal's office or like search my car because my eyes looked funny when I pulled into the lot, or you know, I don't know. And I think that I don't know, it is something that I'm thankful for.
In the mixed ages, as an adult now, with either friends having kids or just, you know, people, a lot of people grew up without being around kids or with families or having that kind of understanding of how that works by seeing it and being in community with people of all different ages. Communicating with parents and, you know, being able to conversate with adults and being able to hang out with kids that were 5 years younger than you know, at the same time.
You see, we're almost out of time. How about for just a last question Would you say that being self-directed or self-motivated is a requirement for unschooling?
I thought this was kind of interesting because I feel like unless your kids are older and you kind of already have an idea of how self-motivated they are, that you have to have a chance to be self-motivated or self-directed before you really know that, and that unschooling gives you the space to become self-directed. So I wouldn't tell people that your kid had to be self-directed to homeschool, because I don't think you're going to know, or that's that. I don't know, but
Yeah, I think you're right, Amy. It gives you the space to be self-directed.
I kind of think self-direction is a prereq for just life. But maybe that's just me. Or it's just like better off. Like I don't know. It seems really valuable to me as sort of a life skill far beyond the classroom.
mm-hmm. And to be self-directed, you have to be given an opportunity to make those choices for yourself. And if you're not homeschooled, then I mean, you're not going to really have the time to become self-directed.
I've thought about this question a little bit before, because I have a younger brother that's 8 years younger than I am, and he wasn't homeschooled. He went to alternative schools for sure, not standard public schools. Until high school, he went to high school too. But and I don't know if I think this because he didn't go to, he wasn't homeschooled, and if my perception of this is swayed because of that. But I always thought it probably wouldn't have been for him. And I don't know if that's because of being self-directed or what have you, but I just now listening to Amy say that maybe you're too young to know if it's the only path for you or not. How would you know when you're 4 if homeschooling or not is the right choice? But I think that and even as adults, I think you don't know if that's the job you want until you try it out, and you either want to do it or you don't. And then, but you don't have to decide when your kid's 4 if they're going to homeschool until college, because you could decide they're going to homeschool now, and then if that changes for whatever reason, it changes, and that's okay. But I think it's important to frame it in that way that Amy did, that you might not know right now, and that's okay. And just getting to experience different things and being flexible and able to change as your child changes, listening to them. My parents always listened to me and gave me a voice in whatever choices happened. I think you just kind of learn together and find the right choice for you. So I don't think there's any prerequisites to homeschooling or unschooling, but just kind of, if it's right for you, you guys will feel that out. If that makes sense.
I was gonna ask if you had any suggestions for parents considering this as an option, but I think you kind of nailed it there, Andy.
Yeah.
Anybody else about suggestions for parents who might be considering homeschooling as an option? Any advice?
I mean, I feel like now is a weird time because a lot of people are either having to do it not out of choice or and that so it's kind of a different answer to people who are already interested in this versus people who are kind of stuck doing it, or if you have to do it in a certain way to keep up with the idea of your kid going back to school in a year. But there's different advice. But I think my advice would be that there's so many ways to do it that you can find a way that will meet your family's needs in a way, but that kind of identifying what those needs are at the beginning, that we the parents' needs and the kids' needs, and just kind of starting there. It's pretty varied right now, I feel like.
I think thinking about it in this context of a global pandemic where a lot of people don't have the choice and they have to stay home, it's been interesting to me to see like peers and coworkers that have kids, and they're staying home, and some of them I can tell are very worried about, like, it's been 4 months and my kids have not learned X, Y, and Z yet. And like, to me, it seems kind of funny, just because like I went so many years without academic education, and I feel confident in the way I turned out. And I think like there's 4 adults here that were unschooled that are like really beautiful, loving, smart, intelligent adults that all turned out very well. And I almost want to be like, I went so many years without academic education, and like I'm okay. I think, and it reminds me of, I don't know if it's like Laura, that's just this idea of like potty training a kid. And I remember Laura saying, and I'm sure so many people say this, but Laura saying, it's not like your kid's going to go to high school wearing a diaper. Like, they're probably going to learn how to use a toilet before then. Like, they're going to learn the things that they need to learn when they need to learn to do it. And if we're thinking about it in the context of like just feeling comfortable not having that academic structure for a certain period of time, like, you know, I think the 4 of us that are here are a testament to, like, if you want to learn it, you'll learn it and you'll excel at it.
I think I would just stress modeling. Like, if you're going to homeschool your kid, like, be aware of living your best life. Do your thing, you know, pick up an instrument, like learn how to play an instrument in front of them when you're bored, kind of thing. And like to try and channel whatever questions or concern, like whatever concerns you're having in that week or in that month about your child, and like find that in your life, like in your practice somehow, and like model that. If you're concerned they're not having enough playovers or being social enough, like do the work yourself to have your friends come over. And I think, yeah, I don't know, I just, for a lot of the time that I've spent with like parents and kids and adults, and it seems to me like that's sort of how kids learn, is they just kind of pick it up when the adults around them are doing it, and that it can get challenging when what the adults around are trying to do is specifically make the kid learn it. Like, yeah, I don't know, I would model it, and I would like try not to put the weight on your shoulders of having to cultivate this amazing experience for your kid. Like, if you're manic doing it, they're not going to have a good time. So I think, yeah, just model and have fun and explore and play.
Right. Sorry, I don't interrupt you, Jess.
No, go for it.
Take the opportunity, whether you're, you know, whether you're hesitant or not. This is a great year to homeschool. If you have to or not, like, take the opportunity of either the continued bond that you guys have from the first 5 years of being a young child and preschool and all of that, and just keep with that. I mean, you're never going to regret spending more time together as a family, and, you know, continuing on that natural learning and modeling that's already been happening in that first, you know, 5 or 6 years.
And I think I would just say, like, you know, your kid, you're seeing what makes them excited and what learning styles work for them, and just kind of follow their lead and think about what you can do so they can thrive. Sometimes I hear like a lot of people say like, oh, like if I do this, my kid will be fine, like they'll be all right. But like, why don't you do something where they can be great or awesome? And I think it, you know, it takes a lot of research and talking to a lot of people and seeing examples, but there's like so many different ways of schooling. Like there's so many ways than just going to school. And so just explore that.
Thank you so much. I feel like you're all kind of coming home to nursery school. I really appreciate you being here, taking the time, and I know Amy and Kate are still local in our area, but Andy's coming to us from San Diego and Jesse from Washington. So it's just wonderful for me to see you all.
Yeah, welcome home.
Truly. I see Carol put some resources in the chat. Maybe Carol, I'd like to add to that the HSC who's having their online conference August 6th to 9th, and that's usually a really good conference, and it's online this year, easy to access. So maybe we can put something out tomorrow, you and I, just a note with these resources to accompany this video.
Yep.
And I just want to thank everybody again.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Sadie's
Thank you.
Sadie. Oh, Miss Sadie.
kept barking, but I had her muted.
Oh, yeah. It was nice to see the pets.
None of us mentioned nature and all the great time in nature that we spend. About that one?
Yeah.
There could be so many of these.
Savi gets a chance to do that, so as you know, Amy. So you guys were great. Thank you so much. It was so fun. You couldn't see me sitting here going, yes, yes, and laughing at some of the stuff you said. You were great. Good to see you all.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed
Anya says they are.
Yeah, thanks, you guys. It was good to hear that perspective, and we recorded it, and then we could send that out just to our current families and to maybe some of our families who are like have 6 to 9 year olds. And for next year, looks like virtual schooling will be in place for most of our local school districts. So it's something for people to start to think about and to look at some of these resources. And if they have questions, we'll pass them on to you guys. But I really appreciate you spending this time to get these ideas percolating for some of our families.